Great. Well, I want to thank everybody for coming out today this afternoon. And want to offer thanks to Los Rios for hosting us. We have Dan Throckmorton here today from Los Rios. And they really have a great commitment to transit-oriented campuses. And so we really appreciate that commitment and appreciate you all coming here to City College today. I just wanted to give you a quick update on the grant project before we take it over, before I turn it over to Lisa Bates and our panelists today. Many of you have been involved in the grant project since we started in early 2011 and through the winter and spring. We really did great work in developing planning considerations that we at SACOG are using to look at the 5 case study areas that will be included in our transportation plan update for project level analysis for how we can really achieve those goals of Senate Bill 375 of building housing and affordable housing near transit. And so really want to thank you for all the work that we all did together this winter and spring on those working groups. We will be getting notices out about what's next for the working groups as we get closer to diving into these 5 case study areas. And really expect to use you as a consortium members as we look at how to solve problems that we uncover, the issues that we hear about from the community as we go into these 5 areas and really develop community level, grassroots level driven action plans to say how can we build complete communities near transit. While we're doing that, we want to keep the consortium informed on topics like today, and I really want to thank our panelists and Lisa Bates for helping us get into some of the really deep considerations about how can we do this in this economy and what are some of the new strategies we can use as we move forward. So look for us having workshops later this year, probably November, December, in those transit action plan areas, in those transit planning areas. And then in early 2012, we will be doing the environmental analysis for these project level housing projects in 2012. And so that's going to follow the transportation plan EIR. So we will have our MTP EIR coming out in November in draft form for you all to review. So plan time over the holidays to look at that document. But then please save time in 2012 to work with us as we get into the action plans for those areas. So with that, I'll turn this over to Lisa Bates, our moderator for today.
Thank you, Joe. It's great to be here today, and we have a wonderful panel of experts that I'm real excited that we could have join us to talk about the market realities and the risk factors that it's going to take in order to really move forward on transit-oriented development. What I think I'd like to do is just introduce them by name, and maybe they can sit down so they don't have to stand. So with Domus Development is Meea Kang, and all of their bios are in the information that was given to you. So Meea, welcome. Brian Prater is with the Low Income Investment Fund from the Bay Area. He works in the Western region, and he's got some great things to talk to us about, particularly about a new innovative transit-oriented development land acquisition fund, among other things. Then we have Jeremy Bernau, who is with Bernau Development, and he's doing some great things in Folsom, so we want to hear what he has to say. And if you'd like to take a seat, that'd be great. Thank you. And just see that Tim Johnson has joined us. So Tim is our 4th expert and has a wealth of experience in economic development activities here in the region, as well as internationally and statewide. So Tim, if you would like to join us here, that'd be great. As Joe had mentioned, we really want to learn from the panel today about their approaches to overcome hurdles and barriers to doing transit-oriented development, the economic challenges, regulatory challenges, and working with the community for possibly developing things that the community's not used to. We hope that we're going to get some powerful insights about how we can move forward as a region on not only the sustainability strategy, but also on the action plans that we are working on that Joe mentioned. And what I find about each of these panelists is that they all represent a true entrepreneurial spirit. And that's going to be what it takes as we move forward. 3 of them have created their own businesses, and 1 is certainly creating new innovative approaches as part of the Low-Income Investment Fund. Today, earlier, we heard from Tom Murphy, who's a former Pittsburgh mayor, and I know many of you were at that presentation this morning. And one thing that stuck with me that he said was that, we can either look behind and see how the world was, or we can look to the future and envision how the world will be. And to me, these individuals capture the essence of that statement. They're tenacious, innovative people that do not accept the world as it is and are making dramatically positive, future-oriented impact in the communities that they work in. So I know that I've reached out to many of them for advice and counsel and brainstorming. And I suspect that if you had a flash of insight and wanted to email them at, say, 2 a.m. in the morning, you might just get a response. They're that kind of people. So I hope that you will see them as a valuable resource for your efforts as we all move forward together. So with that intro, just a little bit about how this is going to play out. I'm going to start with some questions of our panelists, and then we're going to invite some of our other consortium members up in a little bit to also interact and provide some dialogue back and forth. And then we want to kind of have a 3-way conversation. So be thinking of those questions and thinking about what they're saying so that we can engage all of us in a conversation in a little bit here. I'm going to start off by basically asking each of them to talk a little bit about why or how they're involved in transit-oriented development activities or what they're thinking about that. So I think I'll start with Meea in the far right, and I don't know if you'll need the mic. I think you're loud enough.
Well, I spent the last, 13 years living in San Francisco. I recently moved to Davis to be closer to Sacramento, in a region in which I'm now calling home. But I think I've been really motivated as both an architect and a developer now to really find new patterns for land use and how we're going to connect people. And I think I spent some time living in Los Angeles where it was a remarkable area where people connected through windshields. We all looked at each other and people wanted to maybe talk to one another, but no one talked to each other. But then in San Francisco, when you're out on the streets and you're waiting for the bus or you're walking down the street, people smile, people say hello, people engage. And I really think as a society, we need to find ways to connect. We need to find ways for people to build new forms of communities, to find tighter relationships. It will help us bridge the gaps, I think, that we have as a society. And so I think I strive in development to find new ways to create new paradigms for how we live together. And part of that to me is about how are we going to also take advantage of the fact that we have so much underutilized land in some of our cities. And these are incredible opportunities. These are opportunities to reweave our cities, to reinvest in our cities, to create new housing, to create jobs, to create a new architecture. And it's a wonderful opportunity to do something really creative. So the recent project we've been working on, our first transit-oriented development, is on 12th Street between D and C Streets, called La Valentina Station. It's an alkali flat. It's an SHRA originally owned property. The site had been owned by the agency for over 20 years, and it had been a problem. Originally it was auto body repair shops. As a result, the land was incredibly contaminated, but it's literally right in front of the La Valentina station, the RT station, the third busiest light rail station in downtown Sacramento. So to me, I saw that as tremendous opportunity. I think some other folks who had passed on it saw it as a burden, too many people, too much vibration. I see it as an amenity. I think especially with gas prices pushing, again, $4, $5, we've got to create other modes of mobility to get people from point A to point B. So everything to me is a challenge. Development is a challenge. Transit-oriented is a bigger challenge, because how are we going to start changing people's patterns of getting around? But I think folks, we're sort of herd animals. We gravitate towards the path of least resistance. And if we can start making the path of least resistance about walking, biking, getting out of our cars, taking transit, we're going to start growing a richer society, I think, because we're going to start to value basic things like getting to know one's neighbor, actually having more time with your family, because we're not going to be commuting for an hour at a time. we're going to kind of find new ways to kind of reconnect with the things that we believe as humans are important. That's one of the reasons why I like trans-oriented. It's one of the reasons why I think it's so important that we as California grow. But there is nothing but barriers to development. And I think between redevelopment going away, between the land use restrictions that are in California, between the struggle between local government and land use and development, we've got to find some ways forward, and we've got to be able to move the needle. And so I hope this group today feels a little bit of inspiration that actually it can happen, but we've got to be creative. And it is absolutely out of the box. This is a different style of living. It's not, it's about choice too. Living in multifamily housing that is a little bit more dense than your average, say, 12 units to the acres style of housing. It's a different way of living. But it's a way of living that is sustainable and it will have multiple benefits. Anyway, I'll move on.
As Lisa said, my name is Prater with Low Income Investment Fund, and we're a CDFI, Community Development Financial Institution. And we're an investor and a lender, and we provide TA, and our role in the whole finance stream or structure is to create things and fill gaps that potentially conventional lenders will not. And so this space, as we described, is a very good one for us. And we're based in San Francisco. Yeah, we are national. We work on the East Coast and the West Coast primarily. And we have created and structured and are now deploying a TOD fund that covers the 9-county Bay Area. And we're about poverty alleviation and social equity. And so it really focuses on affordable housing, community facilities, fresh foods markets, and food deserts. Any kind of complementary uses that could work in a neighborhood around a TOD. And it's one of the first of its kind in the country, the first of its kind that's structured like this. And so one of the things we've been doing is we've had the opportunity to interact with a lot of folks, a lot of localities around the country that have received regional planning grants, out east, in the middle, and then out here, of course. And so what I think is a great thing to see, a lot of things that are going on across the country and how social equity and other issues can be addressed as we move through it. So the fund in the Bay Area is about $50 million. We closed it at the end of March. We're already about 25% deployed, and it's going really well. So we're hoping that continues. And if there are other places that would be applicable and folks would find something like this, if not exactly this, attractive, we'd be willing to help. And we're documenting and sharing ideas, and that is part of why I'm here today.
Good afternoon. Jeremy Bernau. I don't have the pleasure to be quite as original as some of the other developers on the panel, or the other developer on the panel. I actually get the pleasure to work in California's first transforming development, and that's this little town of Folsom. People think of Folsom as a suburban community. What are you talking about? Those rednecks up there, they build single-family houses all over the place. The reality is, the first package rail west of Mississippi went through Sacramento to the town of Folsom. It was laid out as a transforming development in 1855 with little grid-patterned streets, alley-loaded 7,000 square foot lots around the commercial core before the advent of the automobile, all based upon transit and, of course, the gold discovery. And I have the pleasure to work with the city's redevelopment agency and some good partners at the end of the gold line, Sacramento Regional Transit in Folsom, on the original depot rails, which was a parking lot for the last many, many years, to develop a wonderful transforming development called Historic Folsom Station. I really started as more of a suburban developer in Folsom. That's a community that I raised my family in and loved the area, but we've grown beyond our city limits. And so what else was there? Well, we saw this beautiful historic district that had all the qualitative elements of a wonderful neighborhood. We had brand new bike paths. Our mayor, Bob Domus, told RT if they were going to bring RT to Folsom, he was going to run the Siemens regional sprinter down, which he did on the crest, got the gold line out of Folsom. And it's really one of the more successful lines that we're right at the end of that station. The good news is we have a redevelopment agency to partner with. Redevelopment agencies for public improvements and parking projects, which was completed a year or so ago. and is now under construction, unfortunately under contract with a contractor with the public plaza before the end of the year, before the new legislation hits impacted redevelopment. It's great. We have 4 buildings, about 15,000 square feet of commercial and retail, and 60 residential units. While all that was happening, before I joined the partnership, we completed 2006 a mixed-use development right on Sutter Street. We were a little challenged there because we can't do that urban, edgy, very many-story buildings because we have a massing of the 1800s buildings along Sutter Street. So we're limited by that. But it's a wonderful transforming development. We've got people with deposits waiting for the streetscape and the plaza to get complete over the last 2 years. Have had their money up waiting, and we hope to be under construction here in the next 3 to 4 months with our first building out of 4 across from Sutter Court, which is our current building. It's a difficult market out there, but we happen to be in an area that does have all those elements that are so critical. I think the gentleman from State Guard started the presentation and said complete communities. Transit-oriented developments are not buildings next to light rail stations or transit corridors. They need to be complete neighborhoods. And if you don't have those elements, you're not going to create a sustainable environment. And I think we have to remember that because transit-oriented development is a very limiting term. We need to locate, and if we don't have those things there, as you mentioned, we need to bring those elements back. People need safe, they need to have access, but they still need to have separation. And design and all that sort of thing is very important. The types of retailers and commercial tenants we work with are different. But the typical lenders like, which is a national tenant in an anchored strip center out in suburbia for a multi-family complex and 400 units out in suburbia. So at any rate, it's a pleasure to be here today, and I hope that I shed my experience in the city of Folsom, which we haven't done it right. It's been a struggle. I think we'll ultimately, the end product will be right, but it's taken a long time to get here.
Good afternoon. My name is Tim Johnson. I'm like the developers on the panel. I'm a financier. And so I look at things completely different than when they would look at. I was involved in a project at HUD in San Diego called Market Creek. It was part of a foundation that was created by a Fortune 500 owner, Aaron Jacobs Engineering. And he wanted to leave something to the community, and it became an overwhelming project that's still going on today. Similar to Brian, I sit on the board of directors of a community development financial institution, the Clearinghouse, which is based out of Orange County, and it is the largest, I believe, Brian, correct me if I'm wrong, new market tax credit provider that's state-based. We work together because Brian's a national-based organization. We're statewide based. And coupled between our almost $500 million and what he has, we spend a tremendous amount of time working with cities and counties and individual developers to ascertain what their financial and development interests are and how to help finance them. But specifically going back and looking at TODs that have been developed in California, I've been researching those and identifying that there's 3 key components that we fail to incorporate when we move forward with the development of these, and those are design, density, and diversity. And I'm specifically interested in the diversity because, as you all remember the old adage that our marketing mix needs to be comprised of butchers, bakers, and candlestick makers. Today it's actually comprised of Starbucks, banks, and classrooms, and medical office space. And when we look at the capital region, one of the key issues that I think is coming to fruition is how do you finance those folks who are going to go into the TODs? And one of the key elements is that for Sacramento and the capital region, in a recent study by Sac State University, it identified that over 70% of the small and mid-sized businesses in the capital region have been impacted by the credit crisis, which means that they have not been able to get access to capital and have not been able to fill these building spaces that we built for them since the Great Recession, let alone what we're proposing in these transit-oriented districts. So, at least I think you'll be asking me a question later on if I guess I were king of the kingdom here, what I would be asking for. I'm going to hold that question off, but in the meantime, that's my focus and direction.
Great. challenges that we face currently. And I was wondering if you could maybe share your thoughts a little bit more on where you think the market is going, and where do you see the opportunities short and long term for some more transit-oriented development activity within the region. So, again, wants to take that one?
I can touch on that. I think that during difficult times, whether it's a subdivision or transit-oriented development or any neighborhood, those neighborhoods that have negatives are accentuated. There tends to be a flight to quality because people can now afford quality. You look at what prices have done in our marketplace, and they've plummeted to numbers that are way beyond the appreciation that we gained during the uptick. And so I think that I don't know if I have a crystal ball in terms of when we're going to get out there, but if I was, which I am, focused on transit-oriented development and compact high-density development, I'm going to try to focus that on areas that have as many of those attributes, because then currently, and prioritize there. And when it's the market returns, then I'm going to be able to spend more of my resources and time, because what happens when a good market comes, it kind of floats all boats. And so I think that's an important piece right now. I don't know if I've covered it, but it is challenging. Transit-oriented developments, as we've talked about, glad to hear here, and you're here as well. These just typically aren't things that lenders like to finance. I sit on a board for a community bank. I sit next to interviews with the FDIC, and let me tell you, they're not telling you the land right now. And this is a little bit different animal. It doesn't typically have credit tenants. It has a lot of those small businesses we're talking about. And so it is a little bit unusual. There are a lot of funds out there that, and I'm glad to see this, huge funds and pension plans talk about social responsibility, yet want the big projects, the national tenants, and aren't looking at small projects that kind of take a lot of time to spend and evaluate and see come to fruition. They're not national developers, typically national tenants, and I think that we need
lender and a banker, but I guess if you applied conventional standards to us, we'd be a bad one, because we take a lot of risk and don't charge a lot, and that's due to our mission. And one of the things that our fund that we have, it's about $50 million, it's for affordable housing. It's to promote social equity and poverty alleviation, but they're mixed income, mixed use projects, everything that TOD kind of is, complete communities. And it's targeted towards nonprofit and for-profit developers. And when we went out, when we were creating the fund, it was a group of CDFIs in the Bay Area that did this. One of the things we did was we went around and we canvassed everybody we knew, and developers, stakeholders, etc. And if we're doing a fund in the climate in which we're doing it to promote kind of equitable TOD, what products would be useful? And so one of the things that overwhelmingly came back was, of course, cheap. And so we I think we've accomplished that. We're somewhere between right around 4.5%, and we can do land loans of up to 7 years. And so the TODs take longer, and so everybody needs time. They need time to get it going, to go through entitlements, to assemble financing, as Jeremy said. And so we pushed it as far as we could, which was kind of twice what is usually a comfort zone for a CDFI, and our comfort zone is a lot more aggressive than a traditional bank would be. So to kind of living where we are, when is the market coming back? I don't know, but sometimes I get hopeful. I'm always optimistic. And then the Dow looks like the Alps that week, and there's some fluidity again. But I think, when looking at this work now, how we viewed it was, when you're trying to create something, build in as much flexibility as you possibly can. And so we have 5 different loan products. It touches everything. It's long-term. It's high LTV, up to 110% LTV. And then you can create a financing tool that, as the world changes, hopefully the fund can change with it, and then just different products will become more active. So we can start seeding those projects and filling those gaps and sharing risk, so that folks are willing to kind of get involved in these projects in a time in which there's a lot of uncertainty.
This is Meea. Speaking from experience, I think some of the trends that I'm looking at and sort of perceiving, we currently have 4 projects in construction right now, up and down the state, as far south as El Monte, California, and as far north as Kings Beach and North Lake Tahoe. Within that sort of medley of projects, we have half are workforce housing that are rental, and then the other half are senior housing. And those to me are the 2 areas of growth in California. If we're going to look forward into the next 10 years, I think we're going to see the population shift. We're going to have more seniors entering the sort of senior era, retirement era, those that want to get out of their large homes and move into smaller units they don't have to maintain their lawns, they don't have to take care of their homes, and they may need accessibility. They may need universal design and access to care. I think that's a very significant part of our growth. I think the other element is really this sort of new millennium, the sort of everyone who's surrounding us right now in college, those folks who actually want to graduate from college and get a job and get out on their own. These are the folks that don't want to go home and live with mom and dad. They want to actually be able to afford an apartment and then live the life that they sort of were born to live. But the reality is they're not going to be able to afford the types of high-income apartments that might be available to them. They need affordable starter workforce housing. So to me, those are 2 areas of growth that we need to really focus on. So 1, we can take care of the seniors in our community, and 2, we can foster our next generation. These are the leaders of tomorrow. These are the people who are going to be, citizens in our community. It's going to be the next leader of business and leaders of industry. I think we see it in San Francisco. San Francisco is one of those places where it is all about jobs. And frankly, I know a number of businesses who cannot find enough talented young talent to work in the high-tech industry. We need to find a way that we can attract young people to live in our downtown. And we need to create jobs that are going to keep those young people in town, because you don't want everyone living in San Francisco or in Silicon Valley. We've got to find ways that we can grow industry and create the environment that is going to basically be the ground for the next generation. So, that then to me means that it's not going to be what mom and pop wanted. It's not going to be the large single-family home with the white picket fence in the cul-de-sac. I mean, they'll eventually perhaps go there once they have kids, but right now they want mobility. So they want to live in affordable, small apartments that are compact, that are close to things. So we need to keep that in mind as we plan our next city. And so what does that mean? We need to find ways that we can attract young people, but create housing that is affordable to that demographic. And really what that also is the missing middle. Right now we have housing that is deeply affordable for those in the sort of 30% to 60% of AMI category. And then we also have the luxury housing, the pied-à-terres, the condos, because frankly there isn't anything in the middle. So I think one of the gaps, frankly, is really looking at how do we attract the middle? How do we retain that? And then how do we design housing appropriately? We're building a project in the city of Pittsburgh right now. If anyone knows Pittsburgh, it's near Concord, Walnut Creek. It's right off the delta there in their old town. And the old town of Pittsburgh is one of the original cities, early 1900s. We're building 111 units of senior housing, 1 and 2 bedroom apartments on their main drag, Railroad Avenue. And right now, we're in construction. We have over 400 people on the interested list who want to move in. And we're getting people as far south as Florida who want to relocate to Pittsburgh, California, because it's affordable housing that's all designed for seniors. And we are basically going to repopulate this downtown with active seniors. And what we're going to do is we're going to engage them. We're going to provide places, recreation. It's actually a very popular boating area, and restaurants and things that are going to cater to the senior population. We're going to build this whole environment around this new generation that's moving in, which happens to be seniors, but active seniors. So to me, those are 2 really important growth areas that we need to look at. And I think really single-family home ownership, it's still going to be out there, but it's not going to be everyone's first choice. I think what we're going to see, we saw it in the mortgage meltdown, not everyone wants to be straddled with a high mortgage. What people want, I think, are flexibility and options where they can live close to where they work, where they can spend more time with their families, where they can afford to live, where they don't spend their entire weekend mowing lawns and clipping hedges. So that's my crystal ball.
So I'm actually going to give it back to Meea for a minute because one thing that I've learned is that she's working across the state here, but she's decided to invest her own family and herself here in this region. So I'd be curious as to what you see about this region that you've decided to relocate here, and where do you see the opportunities? Because obviously you're coming here for a reason.
I see nothing but potential. I think this region is really poised. I think Sacramento, we are the capital city. We are the leader. I think we've got, really, Steinberg's 375 was born out of this region. I think really we need to be an example for the rest of the state. I travel around the state talking to small cities and large cities about, folks tell me, how are we going to incentivize developers to come into our towns? We actually formed the California Infill Builders Association last year to really start to help local governments and constituents figure out ways that we can find ways to incentivize some of these areas. So I think California and Sacramento really destinies are tied together. And so I moved to Davis. Davis has wonderful bike trails. I think it's just fabulous. I don't know who's all here from Davis, but what a fabulous city. I came from San Francisco where I was so afraid to ride my bike because I was afraid I was going to get hit by a bus. That, you've got dedicated bike lanes. How wonderful is that? You've got, great greenscapes, and we actually have a very small house with solar panels on it. Great, I love it. So to me, this region has so much opportunity, and I think it can attract such diversity. But we really need to find ways to hone what we have that is special, and why people know that it's special, and why we want to stay here. So I'm here to stay. I believe in this region. I want to continue to create, a little bit more of an urban setting so we can attract, again, this next generation and really seize on the great assets that this region has to offer.
Brian, I kind of want to ask you to, as an outsider, you had the opportunity to spend a day with us looking at all the TPA areas from the various jurisdictions and helping, select down to 5. And you're also working in many different communities, some that have also received this HUD regional sustainability grant. What would be your advice to us in terms of practices we could employ or things that we need to be cautious about as we're moving forward here in Sacramento?
Yeah, sure. I've participated in meetings like this in some other cities that have also won regional planning grants or the Challenge Grant program. And the thing I think when I went back and I was talking to my wife after I participated in your first day was the energy in the room, and it was just, it felt like the spirit in which it was approached was great. And TOD is nothing if it isn't cutting across all the different silos. It's a silo buster. And for me, my first TOD experience was trying to learn all the acronyms that all the other partners brought to the table, and I'm still learning. So to have that kind of energy and that momentum and that willingness to collaborate in good faith, I think, is probably the biggest asset. And when I've been talking with other folks around the country, I've started to see that happen. And for TOD and for a regional type approach and strategy, you're going to need that. It's not going to be easy for all the reasons that we had talked about here, and it's going to be competitive. I do think if I had to say a couple things, I have seen in talking with Seattle on the West Coast and the Twin Cities and on the New York and Connecticut on the East Coast, they're right now, if you're focused on social equity type issues, some of the foundations are really focused on that. And there are some philanthropic dollars that are out there that you can bring from the outside into your community. In the Bay Area, we use those in 2 different ways. We use those first to create more of a programmatic and planning element. It's called the Great Communities Collaborative. And that planning work and that collaboration predated the regional planning grants. And that started in 2006. And so we got some not national dollars to fund that type of work. And then it naturally moved into when we decided that through feasibility studies and talking in the community that a financing vehicle was needed, that the foundations and some of the other philanthropy wanted to participate on the grant side for the fund and also wanted to put capital in it. And so we've got about, of the 50 million, about 6.5 of it is philanthropic dollars that really help us, you know, I talked about risk sharing, take the kind of risk that we really want to. And there's a huge amount of interest. It's not just the Bay Area. I mean, there's a lot of interest and activity going on around this. The other thing, you know, going back, talking a little bit about banks, one of the things that we were curious about is if we created a financing vehicle like this to take some risks, would banks be interested, or would they just, you know, run screaming from the building? And so we didn't quite know. And so we created this multi-layered structure and called a couple of the banks who we had relationships with. And, you know, the world, as I grow older, I realize more and more how much it is based on relationships and trust. And we got 25 million, so half the fund is banks. And one of the banks, Morgan Stanley, had not done a lot of work in the Bay Area before. And so what we're hoping is that, you know, through exposure and through interest and through participation in the fund, that they won't fund just the fund, but when our developer partners are out there looking for capital, they can get a comfort around the space. And they'd be more likely to say, okay, here are the risks, here are the rewards, we're comfortable here. So I would say the one thing that I'm feeling is a lot of momentum. A lot of that came out of this whole process at HUD, some federal leadership there. But there's a lot of momentum around the country for funding these types of issues now. And those windows aren't there forever. You know, foundations are fabulous and we love them, but they also change their priorities fairly quickly. And so there's a time now where this is something that a lot of them will support. And for the communities that are showing that collaboration, et cetera, and putting some emphasis on the social equity issues, there's some dollars there to kind of help that would benefit everybody in the community. That's what I would say.
Jeremy, there's quite a bit of diversity in the region in terms of opportunities for TOG. We have very urban, we have suburban, we have kind of neighborhood level. And when we were looking at the action plan strategies, we tried to pick various communities to test out how we might approach those particular neighborhoods. Do you have any advice about how we might look at those from a developer perspective, what we ought to be considering?
I think that really any type of development is successful and sustainable. There's about 6 steps that we look at, and I did spend some time driving around looking at that this last weekend, even though I'm from the area. And I think that one of the first items, as I mentioned, I won't repeat it, but it was the qualitative issues. And I look at each one of those as one of my prospective residents, whether it's a senior citizen, somebody with disabilities, or a young couple or a family. And I look at that location and that neighborhood and that potential job as, what are those neighborhood elements that it has? What are those neighborhood elements that it doesn't have? And is there a promise or an opportunity to build in some of those facilities, whether they be child care or whether they be restaurants and that sort of thing, that will begin to rebuild a vibrant and sustainable neighborhood. So the qualitative issues are really number one. It really doesn't matter to me if I'm in a suburban environment or whether I'm in a TOD. It's where people are living, and it has to have those pieces. And the second one, of course, is available land. That's pretty obvious that there is available land, but I think even more than that, who owns it, who controls it, and actually can really reasonably be acquired. Some of these sites have multiple diverse owners that make it very difficult to put a project together from an economic standpoint. The next side of it is the types and mixes of uses. I spent a lot of time in the neighborhoods. If we're doing some retail, we do some retail gap analysis to look at, some of these TODs don't have enough families and residents to support some of the retail. So what can we bring to that? Because we're not going to always have the Fresh and Easies or Sprouts or whatever the case is and be able to support it just from that development. And so, what are the types of uses? What are the price points or revenue points in terms of what we can do on that land to There's then the infrastructure to support it. And then I started to do the financial analysis. And I think this is one of the things that I mentioned earlier where the city really didn't do that when they did their original design. They decided that there'd be a planning exercise, not a financial exercise. But ultimately, these things have to be things. And you have to understand how the numbers work. So we kind of worked through initially the back of the napkin, run through those varying uses, what the revenues can be generated, whether it's income or sales revenue, and work all the way through and get to a residual land analysis and find out if in fact that land can be acquired at that price level. And then of course, one of the most important things is the community and the neighborhood going to embrace it, and is the community going to be supportive? I mean, one of the challenges I think prior to the effort that was put forth by Economic Development Corporation in the city of Folsom was in our historic district. We had very strong preservationists. We had commercial interests, and we had historic resident interests. Those were the three main. There were many others because our little downtown was an area that was on the top of everybody's list in terms of the reasons why they moved to Folsom. So there's a lot of care in that area. It was much easier for the city council to stay away from making any decisions there because they weren't going to win. And so I think that that effort of collaboration between the residents, between preservationist interests, those workshop processes, and that public collaborative process was key. And it was also key that the jurisdiction, the local jurisdiction, supported that effort to the degree they did. And I think that those are kind of my 6 ways that I approach things, that I really approach any development. And that's the 6 ways that I approach those thoughts. And again, as I mentioned earlier, in this environment, we need to look at those with the understanding of the economic situation that we have and prioritize those areas based upon their success. We want to get some success ultimately because it continues to breed more and more success. So I don't know if that helps.
Tim, earlier on you had talked about the need to fill the spaces in Todd's with businesses, and I know you work a lot on financing for the business side, less the bricks and mortar. Can you talk a little bit about what you think might be strategies for bringing the businesses to these developments, and maybe also a little bit about the public-private mix that you think ought to occur as we're looking forward?
This will wake everybody up in the room because I start to see a lot of eyes starting to close right now. To do what these 2 developers have talked about is almost impossible because Wall Street does not want to buy the financing on the secondary market. And that's the toughest thing that you're going to run into as planners and economic developers, is that one of these great developers are going to come to your community and say, I want to do this. However, I need to help to get the financing to do it. Now, Portland and Seattle, San Diego have been pretty good in terms of helping financially, using a variety of different tools, incentives, write-downs, use of acquisition of property in order to achieve what Jeremy was talking about and what Meea was discussing earlier. The number one concern, again, is being able to get financing for these projects. And that's where what I'm really excited about, what Brian has been working on with his organization, LIFT, and our counterparts, all the community development financial institutions, is bringing those to bear. Because what has transpired and what's going on currently is what we found out is this. We've become like good druggies. Yeah, we're attached to those narcotics of tax increment financing and have been utilizing that as our basis for financing many of these projects. If that goes away based upon the Supreme Court hearing and what the legislature wants, where are you going to turn to find financing for not only the brick and mortar, but also getting the businesses that will go into these facilities? That's a difficult problem right now, and is one that I think at least we need to develop here in the Greater Capital Region. I know that there's political issues out here, but I'm going to step over the boundary here. I've already done it once, so I'm going to give you a solution set. Well, Brian has brought together a great program for bricks and sticks. I'd like to suggest to you that over 10 years ago, the Federal Reserve created a program called Equity and Equivalent Line of Credit, EQ2. And you can create a program. Clarence Williams is here from California Capital. Clarence, raise your hand back there so everybody can see it. You have programs where financial institutions can make an investment into an intermediary, be it a city or county or nonprofit organization, whereby that money can be used for specific causes, whether it's funding minority, women, disadvantaged, disabled, veteran-owned businesses. Now, what we need to do is come up with a thought process to develop an overarching one for the capital region, so that as you plan and you economically develop these projects, you have the financial tool in which to reach for and in which to direct the businesses that want to go into these thoughts towards. Because Lord knows if they try to go stand in line for an SBA loan, or if they go try to stand in line for a standard debt equity loan, the chances are they're not going to get it. There's real confusion about these thoughts, the way that they're built and how the people are going to buy these on the secondary market, and how you're going to finance these and the risk and exposure associated with those from the financing side. Now, as a board member of a CDFI and a new market tax credit provider, I have no problem with it. I get it, I understand it, we're willing to take the risk. But we don't have the levy of financial organizations that the Bay Area has. Almost on every street corner, there's a micro enterprise lender. There are larger lenders who will work to support the sweet spot that small businesses are looking for, and that's from $50,000 to $100,000. You know, in today's market, the average size SBA loan in the greater Sacramento area is in excess of $200,000. Now you think about the necessary collateral and equity that you need to bring together for that. And those have been typically brought to bear on the backs of the business owners' real estate that they own. Their homes, their houses, other property. Well, what's your home worth today? And if you're a banker, do you want to take the belief that that home is going to be worth $200,000 and what do you have in terms of appreciated value moving forward? There's some real concerns out there, and so we need to bring together a tool, Lisa, like an equity and equipment revolving loan fund that's in the millions, tens of millions of dollars to support this growth if we're going to be successful. Brian's got a program that we need to copy, and I would hope that you would pull him aside later on and ask him how you can bring an effort here together. I know that from the clearinghouse, we would be highly interested in participating in the one here. I might also add, too, one of the things that they were talking about, and what Brian had discussed, was the philanthropy that goes on. Don't forget that financial institutions like Chase, Citibank, Wells, US, Bank of America, all have foundations. And for the cities and counties that are here today, you need to be thinking about going to them and asking them for contributions for funding the development of said program. The other thing that's interesting, Jeremy, you talked about it, although you probably wouldn't see a Walmart at the top. Walmart and Sam's Club are making philanthropy available for tots today across the nation, specifically on the East Coast, where they know that there isn't the land mass for them, but they can get into it and involved in another way. And so those are opportunities that I think we need to take advantage of.
Great, thank you. I'm going to ask that some of our steering committee members who are part of the consortium come up and join me for some additional questions. And then while they're doing that, I have a question that I'll be asking the panelists. So Bill Mueller, who is the CEO of Valley Vision, will be joining us. John Woodling from the Regional Housing Authority. Chris Benner from the Center for Regional Change. That's it, right? Okay, so the last question that I have for you all is, we've talked a little bit about the social equity aspects and the opportunity for maybe some resources to address it. Some would argue that TOD in itself is bringing equity. But could you describe a little bit more in terms of the work that you're doing, how you may have brought a certain equity component to the work, whether it be access to health care, affordable housing, jobs, green buildings? And our region has started to look at a number of indexes, opportunity indexes and vulnerability indexes as a way to kind of help inform our decision making going forward. And so how might those indexes play into decisions around TOD? I know it's a lot, but I'll start with Meea.
Well, I have a couple examples that just popped to my head. One of the first projects my company did was in Oakland. It was called Lincoln Court. It was, if anyone knows Oakland, it used to be what was called the Hillcrest Motel, which was when Jerry Brown was mayor of Oakland, was the #1 problem spot, where it was the #3 hotspot for crime in the area. We were able to work with the city and others to take down the property, raise the motel, and build back 82 units of senior housing, of which 30% were supportive, thanks to MHP under HCD. I know Lynn Jacobs is here. We were one of the first recipients of the supportive housing fund, which we were able then to provide 30% of the housing towards seniors that were very frail and either at risk of being homeless or homeless. And we mixed that with more ambulatory seniors and seniors of a higher income. We partnered with Self-Help for the Elderly, a very prominent Bay Area nonprofit, and we built the first open senior center. This is an area that had a lot of seniors in the area. We were able to bring in organic healthy lunches for $2. We were able to bring in a huge computer learning center where we partnered with the the adult school in Oakland. So we were providing a series of classes, exercise classes to computer classes. There were programs every single day. It felt like you were on a cruise ship. I mean, there was activities every single day. It was amazing. So our wait list stands at over 3 years. We have so many people who are really trying to get in. Our occupancy stands at pretty much at 100% all the time. And it really combines an incredible resource, and it's a creative way that we're able to serve the greater community, as well as the seniors within our facility, as well as many seniors who would otherwise not be able to live independently. And it was quite exciting. It was really a labor of love that we put this thing together when we did. The other project we're doing is in City of El Monte, and it's one of those areas that's considered, I forget the phrasing, but there's so many seniors in the particular area, but so few resources, very few hospitals and senior centers and facilities for geriatric care, that we're able to partner with the City of Industry to do the first supportive housing, similar model where we partnered with various clinics in the area, and we're building a huge basically clinic wellness center. So we're going to have case management, we're going to have doctors that come visit, as well as a large teaching kitchen, it's a commercial kitchen where we're going to actually work with seniors for healthy food. And so we're going to teach them how to cook and live independently. And all of this was funded through various, 10 different sources of funding. But, and right now we have huge demands for, right now we're in construction, and we have a lot of people who are interested. This is the San Bernardino Valley, sort of by Pasadena. Anyway, nothing like this exists in the region. We're also able to garner some funds from the City of Industry that allow for seniors who use emergency care frequently. We're able to then get those seniors into the housing, and we're going to actually then help the emergency care overload. So we'll be able to provide ongoing wellness and support so we can keep seniors healthier and in their own homes. So again, these are really, these are tough projects to do, but one that is, I think folks can tell, are really important to have. This is access to care. And I think in the society that we live in now, there's, we have fragmented families. We don't have kids who can support their parents. So these are different ways in which we can do that. So to me, those are great options, and I think TODs, all these are in TOD locations, are all next to transit, so, again, it provides options for folks. And so I think as far as senior housing, as well as in all of our facilities, because I primarily build affordable housing, even in our family housing projects, we have, computer learning, after school care, lots of things that really help families stabilize and help them basically live their lives and support their children and families. So I think these are great opportunities to really think out of the box and take housing just a little further into a level of support as well.
Well, it's probably the easiest question of the day for me, because of our mission is poverty alleviation. So if we're doing anything but social equity, we've got a problem with the IRS. And we're not. We're doing all social equity. But the first project that we funded through the TOD fund in San Francisco is a partnership with the Tenderloin Neighborhood Development Corporation, which is a seminal nonprofit affordable housing developer and provider of services in the Tenderloin, It's a $7 million loan for a parking lot at Eddie and Taylor, about 2 blocks from Hollow Street Bar, and very close to Market Street, where there's a lot of development going on and gentrification pressures. And the idea is that it's going to be a 5-year loan, and that 153 units of affordable housing will be built above a grocery store. And the grocery store is going to be a new market tax credit deal that we're going to partner with Clearinghouse on. And the fund we did the acquisition for the whole site, and we can also participate in a new market tax credit deal. So that's our first project. It was a big priority for the Tenderloin Neighborhood Development Corp, and it was a huge priority for the city because it's a great site. We thought if we lost the site now, there would never be an opportunity to get it back. So.
I'm going to be brief because it just amazes me what these two folks do. I'm a market rate developer, and I believe in TODs because of the densification of transit-oriented development, because it's a better place to live, it's more energy efficient, it's more sustainable. But it amazes me what the nonprofit developers do. And when you combine the nonprofit developers and the market rate developers in a community, wonderful things can happen. And I think you satisfy all segments of the community. But I'll have to admit, I can talk a lot about design and that sort of thing, but I can't do the types of things that these people are doing on a daily basis for those that are disadvantaged.
In the TOD that we financed in San Diego, we used the Federal Reserve to help identify the fact that there was the absence of a financial institution in the neighborhood. So we used the Community Reinvestment Act to bring to bear retail development there and subsequent financial literacy. Second comment was that we recognized that there were folks who were in what we would call low-skilled jobs that needed to move to middle and on to high. And by doing that, we were able to convince the community college district to put a facility there that would support the growth of education and classrooms in the area, that acted as a storefront. That was an excellent program for it. And then thirdly, working in concert with the California Endowment, they had identified the fact that there was no grocery store in this area of San Diego for a very large radius. And so through that, there was use of foundation money to outreach to grocery store chains to recruit to the TOD. So a variety of success stories on that one.
Thank you. Now I'm going to stop asking the questions and turn to my colleagues here. I'm sure they've been listening and thinking and have some even more challenging questions to ask than I did. So I'll start with Chris here.
Well, I'll continue on the theme of social equity, because one of the things we're involved in with the Center for Regional Change is really helping to think about the equity dimensions. And we had a whole series of meetings and community engagement, and I think the sentiment that Lisa suggested, that a successful TOD development in and of itself, in most cases, is going to be a contribution to equity in the region as a whole. But the other key concern that was expressed was ensuring the principle of development without displacement. And I wonder about your perspective on that, because that displacement issue often happens not from the project itself, but the spillover effects on neighborhood properties. And it may seem like a distant concern in our current environment, but it's been an issue in the Midtown area of Sacramento. It's very likely to be an issue in that R Street corridor area. Alkali Flats is an area that might be of interest. So just your perspectives on, from a developer and financer's perspective, do you think about gentrification? Do you think about the impact of your projects on neighborhood dynamics? And what do you look for to try and ensure that the projects don't displace low-income current residents in neighboring areas?
Well, we recently completed entitlements and we're in construction on the first workforce housing in Kings Beach, which is North Lake Tahoe. And if anyone knows North Lake Tahoe, we've got folks like the TRPA, Tahoe Regional Planning Authority, which governs land use. We've got Placer County, which governs land use. As a result of all those wonderful agencies, pretty much not anything has been built in over 65 years. So that means existing housing for the workforce that supports the North Star, the casinos, the hotels, the restaurants, and on and on and on, live in the most affordable place in Lake Tahoe, which is Kings Beach. But they live in converted motel rooms, which were built in 1950, that were about 200 square feet. Families 6 to 8 would live in these rooms. Kings Beach was originally a trailer park, so there are a number of trailers that are still existing from 1950, which don't meet snow load requirements, that have no real plumbing in some cases, and families, and one time there was a count of 30 people living in one trailer. So think about submarine-style bunks, and people taking shifts sleeping at night. So I went into this area because I love challenges. And the reality is that there was such a problem with, from a social perspective, and yet you also saw degradation of the environment, because the only affordable other place to live is Reno. So that means 40 miles each way going in and out to go to work. When you add that to high cost of living, high cost of gas, you know, what's left? Very little. So one of the ways to actually strategically help to stabilize the workforce in the Lake Tahoe region, to create stable workforce housing for the businesses there who were constantly turning over workforce because people just were fed up. And then domestic abuse as a result of social conditions, because people were stressed, living in terrible conditions. We went and bought 5 different sites in Kings Beach, which consisted of 18 dilapidated buildings where we had about 35 families living in there. We were able, after 3 years, to basically build the first, or entitle the first housing where we were the most dense buildings ever existing in Lake Tahoe. The highest density was 10 units per acre that was allowed. By the time we were done, we got 30 units to the acre. We also were approved at the tallest building in town, 4 stories, is considered gargantuan in Lake Tahoe, even though the trees are 120 feet. We were able to entitle the tallest building and the densest building in town. It took us a lot of effort to do that. But what we were able to do then is pay relocation to all of the families, and we've opened up the fact that they're a priority to move back into the affordable housing. And so that way we were able to provide for the displaced families, both from an income perspective. It didn't matter if they were citizens or not. Many of our workforce up there are not citizens. But we were able to still pay them relocation benefits. They were able to move, fortunately, because of the softening of the recession. At the time, there's really 0 vacancy anywhere in the region because of the demand of jobs, because there was actually a housing imbalance because there were more jobs than housing. So we were able to actually get this housing built. The first families, I'm proud to say, will be moving in on September 1 in our first phase. There are 5 different sites scattered throughout Kings Beach. And we were able to put in the first sidewalks ever in town, able to do environmental improvements like stormwater retention. So 100% of all the water that falls on these sites will be retained and basically be recharged into the groundwater. In addition, one of our greatest sort of efforts, I think, is that we're able to take water off of the main highway and detain it on site. So we're actually going to deter 6 tons of sediment from going into Lake Tahoe. We're actually going to maintain and clean the sediment basin so that we can actually recharge the groundwater. So, you know, this is one of those once-in-a-lifetime projects, but we're able to deal with the displacement issues, house folks, as well as then bring back something that now is encouraging, frankly, many others around us to build, because they see that someone's actually been able to do something. So it's kind of encouraging signs, and we're bringing jobs to a community who right now is really suffering. So,
you know, for us, the originators into the TOD fund are all CDFIs, and so we're all nonprofit lenders, and we're all have significant presences in the Bay Area and linkages to all the community-based organizations that work in the neighborhoods, the neighborhood associations, etc. They're kind of partnerships that we've developed over the last 25 years, and so we're keeping the pulse and making sure that the stuff that we're funding has a lot of local support. The designated areas in which we can develop are called priority development areas, which require some local approval and go through a process. And at the fund level, the units that we create on the affordable housing side, at least 75% have to be targeted for folks at 80% of area median income or below. And I think it's going to be much higher than that, and I think a lot of it's going to be 60% or below. And the last thing I would say is that one of the things that I think is we're going to be seeing over the next couple of years is, yes, the creation of new housing, but also the preservation of existing affordable housing. And that's one of the things, one of the products that we designed for the fund too, so that for affordable housing that already exists, if some new development comes around TODs, we have something where we can go in and finance and preserve affordable housing.
To address your issue, I think one of the issues that Brian mentioned very well is that you've got to start early on in the collaboration process when you go through the approvals. And in Folsom, we work very closely with the Historic District Residents Association because their concerns were that some of the concerns that you've seen in Midtown, as you mentioned, where it becomes a yuppie, young, loud crowd until 2 or 3 in the morning. And the local residents that are there don't want to live there anymore, and they are pushed out. And values are affected as well, and sometimes upward pressure as well. And so I think those are considerations that need to be looked at during the approval process. It is a delicate balance because in some of those areas you do have the nighttime entertainment folks that don't seek as much balance as maybe they should. Don't really care too much about the housing, frankly, because those people complain. So I think that it's very important to have a mix of housing, a mix of types of uses, and a balance, and a good discussion with the community and the neighbors as you go through the process, or frankly, you will displace those people in those areas that have a singular type of crowd and not a diversity in terms of that housing mix.
Bill Mueller with Valley Vision. We're a nonprofit focusing in on bringing economic development partners and healthcare partners to the conversation. It's 2 things strike me. One, the innovation that you're representing and where it's coming from. It's very impressive. We need more of that here in the Sacramento area. One of the things that I'm really struck by, though, is that so far we haven't talked about SB 375. And I'm wondering, to what degree is that a help in your efforts or a hindrance? To what degree is it really sort of in your project planning? How much of a lever is it? How much of an advantage is it?
I think the developers are going to answer that.
I think at this moment in time, we have not seen yet what SB 375 can do. I think right now we're in the planning stage. I think the potential is there. I think we need to look at ways that CEQA, for example, could be improved from a streamlining perception, from an exemption perspective. We have baked into the law certain exemptions, which frankly are tough to fit. So, one of the issues is that the people who craft the legislation don't necessarily know how to use the legislation. They are not necessarily applicable to the various issues that we run across. And, as we all know, land use is highly politicized. And when politics play into fact, and we also have things like, which no one's mentioned yet, but I'll mention it, housing siting issues around air quality. Major problem. I would call that a steamroller heading towards TOD. It is, if anyone is familiar with this is the Air Resource Board back in, I think in 2005, put out some recommendations that basically stated that as a public health issue, we're going to recommend that you do not place new housing within 500 feet, or actually 1,000 feet of a freeway, a particular major artery. And the reason for that is because air particulate matter has a higher concentration of bad things. I'm not a scientist, but things like diesel, right? Diesel trucks. We can't control interstate commerce, so we can't control every single truck that passes every single freeway. So therefore, let's just not put any housing there at all. But by the way, guess where all the transit goes? Guess where BART goes? In Los Angeles, all of the bus terminals, all of the locations in Los Angeles counties happen to be within 500 feet of a major freeway. Well, now we have something that's telling us that we cannot build housing. We cannot build TODs next to freeways, which happen to be where all the transit is. So that is an issue. So we have regulatory burdens and problems. And And we have a very sophisticated population as well. We've got folks, we have, we love the word NIMBY because it's out there. Not everybody wants to see change. A lot of people love status quo. Status quo is what they understand right now. So anything that means, ooh, density, ooh, ugly, oh, traffic, congestion, oh, you're going to take my parking away. We don't want to have that. So we're going to find all kinds of reasons, and all kinds of reasons that we're going to try to sue you to tell you not to put that housing there. Well, one of those reasons we can say is air quality. So now under a CEQA lawsuit, you can say air quality, you're now within, 1,000 feet of a freeway. But what's nice about the Air Resource Board is it mentions many, many things. Like if you happen to be next to a generator because you're in a building that has an elevator and you need a 24-hour, or you need a backup generator to run that elevator in intensive emergency, that because it's run by diesel, you're now next to diesel. So no longer can you place housing next to a particular building that has an elevator that has a backup generator, and you could potentially be sued because now air quality is an issue. Well, the Air Resource Board, these are just recommendations. So they basically said these are not supposed to be a prohibition. You're not supposed to draw a giant line around the freeway and say no housing here, but they don't give you any options. They don't say, here's the mitigation. Here are the 3 things we recommend. Clean your air by fresh air intake, put filters in. None of that's recommended. So they basically went as far as to say, public health issue, beware, don't breathe the air near a freeway. But of course, we're all in cars. If you open your window, by the way, when you're on a freeway, you're going to breathe in that air. But the reality is, how do we deal with this? We as developers in the development community, and you've just opened yourself up. So the reality is 375 is fantastic. I think it is the right step in the right direction, but we do need the tools to overcome some of the regulatory issues to actually realize the dream of 375. So it's not quite there yet. I hope that we as a constituents, we as local government, we as consultants will find ways to remove some of these barriers so we actually can see some results on the ground.
I'm going to let you go.
So I'm going to have John ask a question, then we want to open it up to all of you.
John Woodland with the Regional Water Authority, representing the water and wastewater utilities in this region. And so we're going to move from the above ground, design and innovation to the really sexy stuff, pipes and cables and Meea brought up water, so she opened the door. But my question is, to what extent does our foundational infrastructure, our water and wastewater capacity, our electric power capacity, our drainage capacity, is that an opportunity or an impediment to what you're trying to do? And then a follow-up to that is if you could give one piece of advice to utilities, either public or private, to help realize the economic and social potential of the region through what you're doing, what should they be doing?
Let me take that. I think that there's this assumption that greenfield development is a lot more costly to service, or I should say, maybe not service, but to develop from an infrastructure standpoint. And actually, our infrastructure costs for transit-oriented development is much higher. And it's because it gives AT&T, PG&E, an opportunity to upgrade all their systems within several blocks. We did a 38-lot subdivision in Folsom that good lot sizes. I mean, it was on 23 acres, a lot of open space. Our joint utility trench cost was more expensive, or less expensive than a 30,000 square foot building sitting on approximately 21,000 square feet on an area that's been developed since 1855. So I think that we appreciate the General Sam's recognition. They do have a tiered fee for infill, and we think that's very helpful because that does help us. Some of the issues and requirements with the new wastewater treatment facility, are going to make impossible, the development of some of our retail and our restaurants and that sort of thing. They talk a lot about fees or ratepayers' costs have increased. You got to take a look at what the new restaurants are in terms of an infrastructure. And so I think that we appreciate Regional Sam's effort. We appreciate the redevelopment agencies, especially the city of Folsom. I mean, we had antiquated infrastructure in the historic district. And, you know, between the ADA improvements and streetscape improvements, they spent about $11 million, you know, on 4 or 5 blocks with new water, new sewer, new infrastructure. So I think that there's an assumption, because you're in an area that's been potentially previously developed, that the infrastructure costs are minor. They're typically more. And I wish we could get some control over the public utilities, telephone providers, and that sort of thing in terms of the cost of redoing their opportunity that they take to redo that infrastructure. You wanted me to be brutally honest today. Those are some things that we could use some help on.
I smile because it's one of my very favorite topics. What's really interesting, I think, difference between infill and greenfill, for example, is in a typical greenfill development where you need to lay down new pipe and infrastructure, we have something called mellow roots. It's a vehicle that allows the developer to recoup the cost of the infrastructure as it relates to new houses. You know, it's basically a property tax. You pay a little extra, goes back to help on the bonding, et cetera, to pay for the infrastructure. Well, when you're doing infill, none of that exists. So in my case, when I go into some of the oldest neighborhoods in town, we're dealing with some of the oldest infrastructure in town. So because you're the new guy coming in, it's up to you to fix all of the infrastructure that surrounds your property. So that means it's up to you to upgrade the pipe sizing, pay for everybody else's upsizing. None of the other neighbors are paying into your fee, but we have to pay for it all. What does that do? It means housing costs go up, and there is tremendous risk and less appetite from the development community and from the private sector to say, hey, I want to do this. I want to spend $3 million upgrading 3 blocks of this particular area, because now at the 11th hour, after we're at plan check now, and I've got to close my financing, I'm being held over a barrel because I now have to spend an extra $300,000 to fix this pipe because the city has now just changed their mind. So this happens quite a bit. I'm going to leave you with one example. In our La Valentina project, it's 1 acre. The original plan was to do a lot of stormwater retention on the site, because I'm coming from Tahoe, so I believe in keeping stormwater on site. Let's not dump it down into the combined city stormwater, City of Sacramento. So we got through all of our entitlements, everyone applauded, great idea. Well, we had a conflict because city said, oh, you know, we got the fire department needs to get in here, you gotta push everything back. Forget that bioswale in the back, there's no room for that. So, can't have a bioswale. Well, then how do we do our stormwater retention? Well, sorry, oh, and by the way, urban forest doesn't want trees in the bioswale, can't do the bioswale. Well, that was our whole strategy. We were gonna do stormwater retention, which what? It diverts then water, stormwater, which we don't like because that's where all the pollutants, car runoff, everything goes into our system, which then goes into our lakes and rivers. We want to retain that. By filtering it on site, we're actually cleaning our water, recharging our groundwater. It's a very positive thing. It's actually not that expensive to do. So at the 11th hour, I'm told, can't do any stormwater retention. So, oh, by the way, now you are a micro percentage over what the capacity load of the existing infrastructure. So now you have to pay $300,000 to upgrade the sewer system because you are now over capacity. Because you, city, refused to let me do my own stormwater retention, and now I have to pay $300,000 to upgrade everybody else's facilities. So unfortunately, we've got to find ways to make it a little bit more equitable so that we can encourage the type of my brazen style of development, so we can encourage this because there's a benefit to everybody. But if we cannot get our arms around sustainable practices, around stormwater retention, and even recycling gray water, I mean, come on. We are in a century of sustainability. We need to find ways that we can reuse our resources better. So we can take, you know, water that's gray and water our plants with it. I mean, why is it illegal to do a sustainable practice? And that is, to me, if Sacramento can find ways to grasp some pilots or some new ideas, I think we will start to move leaps and bounds. And we've got to move in this direction because we don't have the resources. We don't have the natural resources that are going to sustain our next generation.
If I can, I'm just going to take one more story. If if you'll let me. And that is in the suburban areas, there's also a disconnect between the planning and the focus and the goals of transforming development and the public works departments and the other infrastructure, fire departments and that sort of thing. I mean, this trying to overlay suburban development standards on transforming developments is impossible. In Europe, have never been built. We're accommodating huge fire trucks. We're accommodating huge turning radiuses, huge garbage trucks, and you can't do compact, well-designed transforming developments for that. I mean, we had a situation on our Folsom project where we had a restaurant, we needed to put a grease interceptor in. This is a suburban community, you put them in the big parking lot, right? They're out there in the big parking lot, it's easy to get to. Well, we're utilizing the entire, I think, 13 parking spaces for this building on site. And they're at an alley level above, and you can't put a grease interceptor in that. Those are in that parking lot, and we're right on the street frontage, on the sidewalk frontage. Well, put it in your atrium. No, we're not going to put a grease interceptor in our atrium. And so we talked to Regional Sand. Regional Sand gave us some great ideas with the Big Dipper. We went back to the city of Folsom and talked to the utilities department. Oh, we don't like those. Those don't work for us. You need to do that. And we just ultimately no alternative. We had to get legal counsel. We looked at it and we found out that Sutter Street was an easement, not a right-of-way given its age. And guess what? They couldn't prevent us from putting a grease interceptor out in the middle of the street as long as it didn't impact any of their underground infrastructure. And ultimately, that's what we did. The good news from that is today with the Streetscape project, there are now grease interceptors up and down the street that are jointly used by those existing restaurants that were there before the streetscape, and now that issue is solved. And so those are some of the solutions that we can get to. But those are some of the obstacles, literally, that come in at the 11th hour on these projects. And I think that disconnect is important. We need to look at more closely adopting standards of work with transforming development.
Well, we asked for honesty, and I think we got it. So I'm going to open it up now to questions from the audience.
Yes. Hi, I'm Marty Maskell, and I've been working for 6 years to develop a co-housing project, which is like an old-fashioned village where neighbors know and care about each other. I've learned about NIMBY, I've learned about Banana, which is built absolutely nothing anywhere near anything. And I'm currently working on a project called Folsom Eco Housing that's 2 blocks from Jared Bernau's wonderful project. And we are having trouble making the numbers work, as you might expect. And so we were looking at SCIP financing, statewide community infrastructure financing, except they charge 7%, not 4.5%. And that's in today's market. And so my question is, does anybody know anything about SCIP financing or any other ideas that might help us?
I'm actually not aware of that.
Actually, we've done a couple of assessment districts up in Folsom with actually Bob Williams, who was the Sutro company at the time, and he was with Royal Bank of Canada, actually has done a lot of the SCIP financing and initiated that program. He's one of the investment bankers on that. And the goal really was to create essentially an assessment district overlay to fund the impact fees, because the impact fees have grown to be such big numbers. And it has the same loan-to-value relationships that Belarus or another assessment district would do, so you're constrained by that. We wanted to use it on our own project, but unfortunately we didn't have the relationship to land value improvements significant enough, because we were buying postage stamp, literally the building footprint. Property was the building footprint. And unlike a suburban area where you've got 150,000 acres for a master plan development, we've got a couple postage stamps, and so we couldn't establish those loan-to-value relationships. And so I think that program is more difficult in transforming developments.
Any other resources you might be able to suggest, offer?
Well, I am. Yeah, if you want to talk to me afterwards, we're gap fillers, so there's, if we can come up with something, we'll try to do it.
Okay, some other questions? Yes.
I'm David Briggs. I'm a former planning commissioner in the city of Citrus Heights. I served several years ago, and one of the issues that we had then with some of the presentations that were made to us were issues dealing with arcane parking regulations. Does that continue to be a problem? Can you elaborate? I see all kinds of nodding heads up there, so I'm assuming I will get a response.
You know, parking is probably one of the most significant issues that affect transfer-oriented developments. Nobody wants to see a parking lots. Structured parking is extremely expensive. What some communities like Davis have done is to encourage the densification of their downtown. I don't know if they still have this program, but at the time we were using the city of Davis and their building department, fire department as a help in getting our approvals in the city of Folsom. We talked to them about how they did that. And what they did is they charged a fee that was equal to about the cost of a surface parking space, and then the city said, we'll take care of the structured parking. Because structured parking fees, I think the parking garage in Folsom was about $54,000 a space, or $55, something like that. Our spaces in the Granite House, all 3 of our 4 buildings have parking because we have residential and we need residential parking on site, obviously, and secured. And those spaces are about 50-some thousand a space. I mean, it's really hard to spread that over, especially if you're a low-rise building. You know, if you're a high-rise building, structured parking, you've got enough density to maybe support the cost of structured parking. But when you get in some of the suburban areas and you're 2, 3 stories tall, 4 stories tall, you really can't afford to do structured parking. Our parking requirements on our first building, Center Court, we got a parking variance, I think, for maybe 56 spaces. And we provided 13 on site for 8 residential units, a bank, an engineering firm, you know, a wine store. And the city's view is we're going to build a public parking garage. We want the densification. We're committed to that, and we're going to take that responsibility. In our new project, we don't park our retail in our restaurant and our offices. We do park on a 1-to-1 ratio our residential units. Our residential units are, you know, 1 and 2 bedroom, mostly 1 and 2 bedrooms, you know, more people. There's enough apartment buildings and condominiums all over the suburbs in Folsom that if you've got a larger family, you've got a nice place to be. So we're next to transit, next to a lot of bicycle paths. We're a pedestrian-oriented community, and the city can justify 1 space per residential unit. And so parking is critical. The cost of structured parking is out of this world, and most projects won't pencil with it unless you can get into higher rise units.
Sorry, it's another one of my favorite topics. Parking has always been a challenge. And part of it is, I think people have the misconception that traffic and congestion is related to parking. Or the fact that they, in a residential neighborhood, that the parking on the street outside their home is their parking. So they may have a 2-car garage, but guess what? It's filled with lots of old toys and boxes and junk. So nobody parks in their garage, but they'll park right outside. And their friends and their family will park outside. So anybody that touches that parking in front of their house, that is their parking. So any new development coming in, don't come and thinking about you're going to be parking in my parking space, which happens to be street parking, which is in front of their house. So we've got this misconception that we think, okay, there's too much congestion, there's too much parking, we've got to, or there's not enough parking, so if we park more cars, somehow we'll relieve congestion. But the fact that we're going to park more cars means that we have more cars. People will own more cars. People will drive more. Guess what? We'll have more greenhouse gases because people will drive. And then if you're trying to do this delicate balance of how do I encourage people to get out of their cars and take transit and make transit work, and oh, by the way, continue to keep ridership going for our transit agencies that are barely surviving because the operation costs and the subsidies that go into transit are just not enough to keep it going. So how are we going to actually find a way to encourage people to take transit? It means we will make it harder for people to drive. If we can find a way that balances a parking with transit, we will actually get people to walk or take transit rather than drive. So case in point, I have a bill that the California Infill Builders have sponsored. It's by Nancy Skinner out of Berkeley. It's AB 710. Up until this moment in time, we have received received overwhelming support. This is one of those, it's around transit, it's a one-to-one parking, it's a minimum, it's a required minimum, or a suggested minimum that cities should not require more than a one-to-one parking minimum around transit. Developers can still choose to put more in, but what it's going to mean is that we no longer have some of this dysfunctional parking requirements around transit-oriented development. So we can stimulate walkability, we don't have to basically subsidize, scarce affordable housing resources to build parking spaces for people. We can actually use money to build housing, not free parking. But up until this moment in time, we've received great support until the League of Cities decided to tell us, don't tell us what to do, you developers. We know what to do. Don't tell us what to do. So now we are faced with this big battle because the League of Cities has decided to kill our parking bill because they think that they know better than the rest of us. This is actually one of those great incentive bills for the state that would actually encourage investment near transit, bring a lower cost to development without the state investing a dime. This means there are many, many projects up and down the state that it could actually get built without having to put excessive parking in, but no, we're back to the same old paradigms of local control over development, sustainable practices we don't want to see. We're all just afraid of our neighbors complaining about parking. But once we start to make the leap, I haven't given up, there's still a chance that we can get our bill passed, that could actually move us forward in a direction that will support transit, stop subsidizing cars, and get California moving again.
I would not kind of tell the whole story, especially to a planning commissioner on parking, if I didn't talk about parking management. I mean, if you just reduce parking requirements, you may create chaos. You may create huge problems. But if you have the ability to manage parking with those areas that aren't in use, for instance, we have two light rail parking lots right next to our development. Well, at 4 or 5 o'clock, those are empty. Why not use that parking, for the evenings? And so parking management is a science. There are some great people on the West Coast that have worked in areas like Seattle and Portland that do parking management. So I think you need to be careful with changing your parking requirements. Do it, but with understanding the importance of parking management and the utilization of parking spaces. And so I think that you've got to couple the reduction with a real scientific approach to how you manage your parking in a transit-oriented development and in the downtown district.
We have one question in the back, and then we'll probably go ahead and wrap it up.
I think I know. You guys can hear me, right? My name is Lee, and I'm a consumer for the most part. I don't build or finance or any of that good stuff. I wish I could, but life is like that. What do you guys see in working with this area as far as getting housing near transportation and transportation viable for the people who live in the housing? I'm in the second wave of the baby boomers, so at this point I'm looking for accessible housing, low income, but we're looking at the fact that the RT system for the most part is decimated due to shortfalls in budgets and all the other good stuff. So you can't get where you need to go on time because the bus system isn't there. But if you're building housing, trying to tie it in with the buses and what have you, how do you see that working together so that the match will gel in the future? Because right now it sucks.
Well, I think with the SACOG Regional Sustainability Plan itself, partly what we're trying to do is figure out how we can encourage more growth near transit, which hopefully in turn would help the transit system be able to be more robust. So it's kind of this catch-22, but what we're really trying to do is figure out how we can encourage accessible housing close to transit, close to jobs, and then hopefully that will help spur some of the things that need to happen in the transit system. So, but it's not easy, and that's why we've got these experts here to help us figure that out.
You know, it's very important because the reality is that one of the reasons we made our investments in downtown Folsom at the Gold Line, the end of Gold Line, is one of the things that was upcoming was an express to downtown that stopped some of the spots and got you down to work in a much faster period of time. And with some budget issues, I think it was finally maybe a mitigation measure on the HOV lanes, and hopefully that will actually, you know, some changes in financing will get in place, and we will have a development that is next to a transit station that it can actually get you downtown in a you know, reasonably short period of time to meet, you know, your office hours or whatever the case, medical appointments or whatever the case is. So I think that those issues, for people to locate there, really look at it as a positive. They want to be able to depend upon it like you're talking about, and be able to use it as a convenient source of transportation. And I think that that's probably one of those qualitative discussions we need to have when we look at these different locations, is not only is it there, but does it get us to the places where people need to go? You have a good point.
One of the things that I'm working on in some of our developments is the next train technology. I think that given our age of electronics and smartphones and GPS systems, that one of the ways that you see increased mobility is predictability. So if we can communicate, whether it's alerts to your phones or these lit up signs that say next train in 15 minutes, that's going to take you downtown, there is a certainty. And because of that certainty, we will see more ridership. So at La Valentina, we're going to actually put in new GPS signs that are going to say the next train's going to be there in 15 minutes. We're going to put a cafe on the ground floor, and we're going to have these light up signs, and we're going to basically say, you will know when you need to go outside. So if you're in inclement weather, you don't have to stand out there for 20 minutes going, did that train come? Did I miss it? Is it there? I don't know. Here's the schedule, here's my time, where is it? You know, we need to use technology to inform us and to make these things easier. I have one example. A developer friend of mine has a project in West Oakland. He built some condos in not such a great part of town. It's a little bit, you know, not necessarily where you want to be when it's dark out. But it's about a mile from BART, and there's a great little bus that would take you to that BART station. But no one in the housing was using BART. Nobody was taking the train to get to BART. Well, the reason why is because nobody wanted to stand outside and be accosted. So then the bus system, this is the AC bus system, created a technology where they were basically sending alerts to people's smartphones. So you could go on your phone, you could say, oh, that bus is going to be there in 10 minutes. All right, I better get myself out there. And then all of a sudden there was a surge. There was a surge of ridership because there was certainty. Because we were able to use something incredibly simple now, which is GPS technology and social media to get the word out. And so once we start seeing, and this is my theory too, once we start seeing that there is more predictability and reliability with transit, we'll have more ridership. Once we have more ridership, we'll have better regularity. It will actually get us to where we want to go. And I think the next thing really is, where do people get off? Let's track, let's see where people want to go from point A to point B. Let's figure out how to make getting to point B easier. And we can do that with the technology that we have. So we need to seize that now. This is not that expensive, but we need to encourage this type of thinking so we can actually make our resources go further and become more reliable. And I think that should be standard in all transit-oriented development, that information is there, we make it easy, we make it convenient, and then people will use it.
Well, I want to thank our panelists. Could we give them all a big round? For individual questions and discussions. So thank you for informing us as we move forward.